From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
And our host, Jonathan Jossel.
Hey, Gary, good to be here today. Things are definitely heating up in downtown Las Vegas.
I guess the most important thing that we need to talk about is the weekly fireworks are back. Welcome to the weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. I was this morning, as of this recording, at the groundbreaking for a new high-rise being built in downtown Las Vegas.
Okay.
And tomorrow's the state of the city, and there was another groundbreaking last week for a new area called Midtown, which is a multi-family hotel development happening in literally between us and the Arts District. Mm-hmm. Then you got this new high-rise being built on Symphony Park. You have another high-rise that's almost done. And I'm looking around downtown thinking, oh my God, this has actually happened. Like, yes, it's May, but it's 2025. And the things we started talking about 17 years ago when I moved here, almost 18 years ago now, and the vision that Oscar started in 1999, it's literally here. There's not much more room for major development. It's all happening. And if this high-rise that Cello broke ground on this morning is to be built with hundreds of condominiums literally to the west of the plaza, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And I was looking at the plaza thinking, wow, they're going to be really close to our fireworks. We might have to adjust a few things. Like, we're a real city now. We can't just shoot fireworks in the middle of everything. We're going to need to figure out that, because when Circa got built, we had to change our firework trajectory.
Right, originally it was off of the one tower.
North Tower
in the south.
Exactly. Yeah. So, starting, as of this recording, I would have started already, but as of May 2nd.
May 2nd, yeah.
Every single Friday, all the way through September, fireworks. Every Friday night, 9:15 p.m. Very cool thing. People are excited about it, it seems. And we did it last year for... I don't actually remember how many weeks, but I think this year it's 30 weeks of fireworks.
Yeah, I think last year was maybe 22. I think we had 8.
We had 8, so it's like 30 weeks of fireworks. It's kind of cool. Every single Friday. My kids are excited, I know that. So yeah, Friday, fireworks are back. Downtown Las Vegas is just crazy with development happening everywhere, people breaking ground, really, really cool projects happening. And the other thing that I was excited about is we just came out of Rudy's weekend, and for those that don't know, Rudy's is the fan club of Brian Christopher, our partner, a slot influencer. Mm-hmm. And Brian was here with 300 of his fans, and what a great weekend that is, and what a following that is that he has. Really, really cool to see. I don't know about you, but it seems like influencers are taking over. They're everywhere. Instagram, Twitter.
You can't go scrolling through your phone without seeing a Vegas Mad or a Brian Christopher or all these guys.
Yeah, and they're getting so much recognition. Yeah. I mean, the amount of time that casinos are now putting into it, and money. I know there's a casino down the street. They're giving money out to like smaller influencers that don't have that much of a following, but they just want to be known as a place where all the influencers go. And
you started this for the most part. I mean,
I
really engaging Brian Christopher. I mean,
I think we were the first to recognize 7-8 years ago that this was going to be something big, and now it seems like everyone's jumping onto it, or have been for a few years now. But when we did it, and we went all in with Brian, and I think there's a few evolutions now of even more social media friendly, fun ways that people are going to evolve. But it's just crazy to me how big it's gotten. It's really huge. So yeah, it's good that we're doing this introduction, because today's guest is going to be a little bit, who knows what. Definitely not, not a typical history, not a typical sort of gaming Vegas.
Right, we're not going back to the 80s and talking about.
No, but we'll see. It'll be good. And oh yeah, sorry. One other thing I was thinking about when I was out there this morning, looking at this high-rise being built and the groundbreaking, as was Shelley Berkeley and the former councilman. Shelley Berkeley's the mayor, who was our guest here. There's the lot that I parked in is owned by Elaine Wynn, and that's where the new museum's going to go. And I was very sad to see that she passed away unexpectedly, I think. At least we had no idea anything was wrong. And what a tycoon of industry she was. The way that people have talked about her since then, and you realize the impact she had on this city. I remember going to the Win, and some people that were there from the early days said how involved she was in choosing the linen and the bed sheets, or linen is bed sheets, linen and the napkins, and the design and the detail. And obviously Steve Wynn gets all the credit, and he deservedly should. But it sounds like she was no shrinking violet in the back scenes, and certainly was very, very instrumental in everything that he did and built, and was the major shareholder at the time of her dying.
Have you had any interactions with her?
Yeah, I had met her a dozen times. In fact, I saw her probably 6 months ago, and she had agreed to do our podcast.
I know.
I'm very upset
we were talking
about
that.
I wish she could have been a guest on our podcast. And we had agreed to do it in January, and then she pushed it to February, and then March, and obviously she died in April. So just very, very sad. Big loss for Las Vegas. You see the impact she had on so many people when I go to the Win, especially, but all over town. She was just a really generous, good person, and huge loss for the city.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, let's get into somebody who knows a lot about the city, and let's get to our guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live on the corner of Main Street. Gary, did you miss me? I was in South Africa for 2 weeks.
Well, according to the podcast, you've been here the whole time.
You didn't even notice that I was gone.
Yeah, there you go.
What do you mean? What do you mean according to the podcast?
Oh, we've been releasing podcasts. We banked up a few of them before we
I think
went
our
live.
listeners know that we're not when an episode comes out, doesn't mean it was done more recently.
That's true.
They could probably hear remember when Rich used to teach us to do as of this recording?
As of this recording, yeah.
As of this recording, I'm excited to tell you that we have a very good friend of mine here. Very happy that he joins on the podcast. Little interesting because he might be better at this than you and I are, so he might be reversing the tables on us. Welcome, Mike Davis. Do a nice introduction.
All right. Well, joining us today is one of the most dynamic and entertaining voices in Las Vegas. Whether he was backstage with A-list celebrities, covering the latest shows on the Strip, or more recently being a producer and host on the Silver State Sports Entertainment Network, please welcome the one and only Mike Davis, still on the corner of Main Street. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so excited to finally be here. First thing out of my mouth has to be a shout out to Lisa. Can I just say, Lisa Melmed, like, shout out to you.
See what I'm talking about?
We love you.
Yeah. He's leading this conversation. We're just here to listen.
No. You guys are going to have to do. First of all, I think Jonathan is a tremendous. Like, he could actually be a talk show host if he wanted to. If he wanted to get out of the casino exec stuff, I definitely think that.
Well, let me not interrupt your shout out to Lisa. Please continue.
No, I love Lisa. Great, a fellow member of the tribe, a fellow South African like you. Shout out to Julian Krinsky. We got to talk about him.
You want to get that?
My dad wants me to give at least 3 Julian Krinsky mentions in this, but I'm
got 2 so far.
We got 2. So
for anyone that has no idea what's going on here, Julian Krinsky is a tennis coach that both you and I played under in Philadelphia once upon a time. That's actually the only time I was ever in Philadelphia. I went to tennis camp there. We'll come back to Philadelphia in a minute.
Wow.
For those that are joining us as more recent listeners of the podcast, Lisa, who Mike's referring to,
yes,
was the original founder of this podcast with Gary and myself. It was her idea her and I were in the office together. I don't know whose idea it was, but we were talking about doing a podcast. Okay. And she was our third partner in this. Gary, myself, and Lisa started this podcast in 2020.
Right.
She probably did 60 episodes with us, right? 70, 80, maybe more, I don't know. And subsequently left to the Fontainebleau, still at the Fontainebleau, still doing an amazing job, still an amazing human being. And thank you for recognizing her,
and
her efforts.
I've always said when we've had our guest, Jonathan Stern, Lisa was Robin.
Yeah,
I was always Fred.
See, that's an interesting. And
you go back to the early episodes.
I worked for Howard. That was
I'm segueing right to it. Here.
See, you're segue. So, and you know what? That's such a. First of all, I love Gary. This is our first time meeting. Both Philly guys. He's a genius. I'm not going to reveal why he's a genius. Like, there's other things happening
to be
that
continued.
He's a genius. But Howard Stern, you are a little bit like him as an
I had no idea you're talking. So you were on the Howard Stern show?
I was an intern.
Okay.
Are we allowed to curse on here?
Yeah.
Okay, I was Howard Stern's bitch, basically, for a period of time, and multiple people on that show as an intern. But beyond grabbing coffee, beyond getting lunch, beyond doing all these things, one of my favorite parts of the job and what I gleaned and took home from that experience was guest research. So like how you guys have research in front of you about myself, I would actually, if Neil Young was coming onto the Stern Show, I would compile, after my daily, menial tasks, I would compile maybe 7, 8, 12 pages of research on Neil Young with all these nuggets that would then be shifted to a producer who would then give that package of information to Howard. And then it's kind of like learning from how the interview would unfold. You start learning from this masterful interviewer, the best interviewer on the face of the earth, Howard Stern, what he would ask and what he wouldn't ask. And it's kind of like jazz. Like if you listen to Miles Davis, a lot of times they say, okay, a jazz musician, it's not about the notes they play, it's the notes they don't play. So it's kind of like interesting to glean and understand, okay, why didn't Howard ask this? Why did he ask that? So it was one of those things.
When was this? When were you there?
I graduated from high school 2010. I graduated from college 2014. I left college early at the University of Miami. I had applied every single year to get an internship with Howard because him and David Letterman are my two heroes. And I got rejected every single year, like literally every year I get rejected. And I would harass them and pester them and say, like, why am I not getting hired? And they basically just said, you got to know somebody. And then one day I was walking around the comm school at the University of Miami. This is the week before Thanksgiving, and somebody dropped out. And they said, can you be here in a week? And I said, 100%.
And they're in New York.
Yeah.
So you went to New York.
So I just left school. I had and my parents were the best. Like, they were like, we got to make this happen for you. So I lived on my best friend brother's roommate's couch for $100 a week, and I worked for Howard Stern, and it was amazing.
How long were you there?
I was there for a little less than a year for the rest of the school year, and then they offered me like a producer job. But by that point, I kind of knew I wanted to start building my own name and all that stuff.
So I might be totally off kilter here, but the only time I haven't watched the Howard Stern show or listened to Howard Stern show because I was in England, obviously.
Right.
I heard a crazy story about Paris Hilton being on his show. Were you there?
I wasn't there for that. So
who was like his assistant?
So Gary Delabate. So Gary is saying
Baba Booey.
Right. So Gary's saying that you're like Fred, you're like Howard, and then when Lisa was here, she's like Robin. So the true sidekick duo is basically it's kind of like a triad, but it's really Howard, Robin, and then Fred, who does these drops, and he's a smart guy as well. But Gary Delabate is the producer. So here's the big thing. As a non-fan, he became a lot less shock jockey by the time I was there. It was a different period in the Howard Stern career.
Yeah, I think the stuff I heard with Paris was pretty shocking. That's why.
Right. And it's not that there wasn't craziness still occurring, but it just wasn't ridiculous over the top, you know.
But if you go back to, I don't know, maybe 2006, 2007, Howard Stern took over everybody's morning.
Right.
On the radio, everything else. So by the time you got there, it was on Sirius, right?
Right. So it was at Sirius, McGraw-Hill Building, and Midtown Manhattan. And yeah, it was, just a totally different period of time.
So you weren't there for Benji?
Benji Bronk.
Yeah.
So well, I was. Okay, and I'll just say one last thing about that, because I can't reveal everything. But Benji was absolutely the weirdest human being I've ever met in my entire life. I would have to, just as a wrinkle, you're a fan. I want to know how you know Benji. So everybody had a specific order. So I'd have to go around, and this is before the show started at 7, now it's later. I used to get there 4:20 in the morning before Howard get in. I'd get his breakfast, I'd get his coffee. I'm going all around Manhattan looking for this stuff. Benji, all he wanted was 2 cups of ice. And it was the weirdest thing. And I would just give him these 2 cups of, and I think he would chew on the chunks of ice throughout the show. I guess. I don't know.
All right. Well, you're a Philly guy.
Yes.
You're from Philly, and you did this little stint there. Obviously, this podcast is focused on Vegas. You two share the love of Philly.
Yes.
I do have a question on that. Do you know why so many people from Philly end up in Las Vegas? Somebody told me this, and I wasn't sure if it was accurate or not. I heard it was because a lot of them learn the gaming business in Atlantic City.
Probably.
But then come out here to get the real thing, so to speak, the Mecca.
I think if you enjoy Atlantic City as a Philly native or anybody in Jersey, I think you've always looked at Atlantic City as mini Vegas.
Right.
And the bright lights of Vegas really come at you. But you cut your teeth in.
There's a lot of people from Philly that end up in Vegas.
There's a lot of East Coasters. We got to give I feel like I'm just giving shout outs the entire show, but Oscar Goodman.
Yeah.
Philly guy, we're here at Oscar.
He didn't get out here because of Atlantic City. His story is different, but yes.
Right. But no, a Philly guy, and we always talk about that when I see him. So, I think there might be something about the type of person and the way you are as a Philly kind of native, there's a little bit of a degeneracy. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
element to it. I also think Philly is a funky place because it's not the scope and scale and size of a New York. So I do think there's an element of people who are big dreamers and that kind of stuff where Philly does still have a smallish kind of vibe, even though it's such a vast, big metropolitan city. You can outgrow it, I think, to a degree. And I think a lot of people who are, traversing and going to, Atlantic City and they're driving to New Jersey, I do think there's an element where you outgrow it, maybe.
It's a very interesting conversation because there is. You remember when you joined the Plaza, how many people walked here that were from Philly and were Eagles fans? I mean, that's how you knew they were Philly, because they were all the Eagles fans. I used to make fun of them because you guys had never had a ring back then. Now I can't make fun of you as much.
No.
But it was amazing to me. And then one of them had explained to me the connection with Atlantic City. In fact, Barry Shear, one of our more recent podcast guests, came from there as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a connection. But all right, so because we're a Vegas-centric podcast,
Yeah.
you've listened to a couple of our episodes. We try to keep it a little bit to Vegas.
I'm sorry. I'm just hijacking the show. Is it bad?
Not at all. No.
Okay,
no,
good.
No.
Okay.
So far, but generally, Gary likes to know, and he's just not speaking. Maybe he's listening to your beautiful voice and your radio voice and everything. Generally, Gary likes
He was
to
about
know.
to shout out our podcast.
Oh, was he?
He was good. He was going to show
Yeah.
some love.
Yeah,
He was
that's
going.
all I was saying. But yeah.
What? Say it.
No, I was just saying I love you guys. I listen occasionally. You have some good guests. I thought, some of my favorite episodes, I was complimenting, Jonathan a little prior to the record, but, Sandra Douglas Morgan, good get. I always love when Vital Vegas, Scott's on the show and all that stuff. But I do think you flashed some signs of like a Barbara Walters during your Vegas Pauly C interview. I really believe that.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
You could be a 60 Minutes correspondent. But no, if I'm actually being 100% real, I've interviewed a lot of casino execs in my time with Fox 5 Las Vegas, all the different roles I've had. And I'm always in front of people like, remarkable people. That's what I love about my job, whether it's an athlete, an entertainer, a casino exec, high-level people. And I'm curious, what is the juice? What is the special sauce? What is their superhero power that makes them propelled them to that place, propelled them to that position? And I know Jonathan, through the Jewish community, through other things here, and he's a wonderful human being. He's very generous. He's a loving person. He gives back to our community in a lot of ways. So I knew those things. But I wasn't sure what Jonathan's superpower was as an executive.
Okay.
And I think from listening to the podcast, specifically the Vegas Pauly C interview, I was like, you're such a good listener. You're a great communicator. You're curious. And I think you really are unshy about putting people in their place and really challenging people when they deserve to be challenged.
Well,
and I'll shut my mouth.
No, I appreciate it. I didn't want to interrupt you because I was loving it. It was very kind, very generous of you, very kind of you. I appreciate it. Definitely a skill set in this industry is being able to talk to people from all different walks
Right.
of life, whether it's a casino executive, a sports athlete, or a very, very intriguing personality like Paulie C, who, by the way, the guy stands outside the casinos every day making videos, screaming, and now he's got people from all over reaching out to him, whether it's nightclub owners, restaurant owners, Resorts World reaching out to him. He's clearly making a name for
He's
himself.
fascinating.
It's impressive.
But like Gary would say, just like he was likening you to Howard Stern. So you don't know about Howard, but Howard, beyond interviewing a Neil Young or a Paris Hilton, as you mentioned, he has a roster of these people called the Whack Pack.
Yeah, I got a whack
Okay,
back.
so the Whack Pack. So these are people like, Debbie the Cum Lady, Beetlejuice, Jeff the Vomit guy, Jeff the Drunk, Jeff the Vomit guy. There's all these different characters. Now, Vegas Pauly C is Whack Pack.
He's great.
I mean,
listen,
hello. He's a Whack Pack.
No. When he dropped with us on the podcast that he was playing with his toes on camera live.
Right.
In the bathroom.
Now-
that was a stumbling moment. I was like, oh wow, we haven't had that before.
That is a very Howard Stern whack pack type of thing.
Now, is he fascinating? 100%. I actually think he's fascinating. But you did such a good job. Some of Howard's best interviews are not with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
They're actually with the Whack Pack. So the way that you kind of formed that conversation was very Howard Stern.
I need you to, if you haven't, listen to the one then with Freddie Glusman from
I haven't.
Paris.
Okay.
So you have to go back and listen. That was probably our toughest one, although you weren't. That was me and Lisa and I did. We had to go to his office. Speaking of which, there's all this drama now in the news about Piero's and whatever happened over there. So that's more Vegas
Okay.
history, more Vegas relevant. But thank you for saying that.
Yes,
We
of
do this podcast really so that we can shed light on the history of Las Vegas, the people that were involved in Vegas. And when people look back in 50 years, social media will definitely, as we talked about in the introduction, social media will be a huge part of this city. It's just crazy what's happening with these influencers, what casinos are paying them to go there now,
100%.
or how much notice they're taking of them, and that frankly, that they are moving the needle in business. Whether it's, again, restaurants, nightclubs, hotel, casino, they move the needle. And so we were an early adopter to it. And I do take pride in being able to interact with them, get to know them. And we had both Paulie and Vegas Starfish. Both of them came on this podcast, which was
Okay, I haven't listened to the Vegas Starfish. But the last thing I'll just say to put a bow on the end of that point is I've met a lot of people, do a lot of these interviews. I'm a Vegas local. I'm a Vegas consumer. There is a trickle-down effect. And when you enter a casino property, whether it's a casino property, it's a bar, it's a restaurant, whatever, there's a trickle-down effect from leadership. And I do think the way that you are open on a podcast, the way that you walk the halls here, the way that you are as a human being, it does warm up the space. And those are intangible things that can be felt to a consumer as they walk through a place. So that's the last thing I'll gas you up with. But I do think it makes a difference. And I know Vegas locals, as I talk to people all the time, that's a huge thing about the community and when you go to places.
We couldn't have said it better, and thank you for saying that. We love the fact that that's why we do this podcast, so thank you for recognizing that. But enough about me.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's
See, I'm not good about talking about myself. That's why I'm more comfortable talking about other people. But we'll see how you guys do with me.
So you leave Howard Stern. Where does that take you to next in your journey?
So the big things to know with me is in high school, I started doing stand-up comedy. So that was, I knew in fourth grade I wanted to be a talk show host, like literally. I remember the exact moment. I was giving, a lot of people are talking about gorillas right now, and whether one gorilla could, beat 100 men. That's like the big social.
I saw that on Twitter. Why are people talking about
I don't know.
that?
Everybody's
So
talking about it. It's so stupid. But speaking of gorillas, in fourth grade, Mrs. Martin's class, Stockton Elementary in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I was giving my first ever public speaking, presentation. And my animal was the silverback gorilla. And I did this whole, poster board. My parents are very involved people, Jewish communities usually like that. So they start building this poster board for me. They're basically doing the whole project for me so I get an A. But I did research.
Yeah.
And when I finally gave this presentation, this talk, in the classroom, I started riffing. And I just started going off script, and people started cracking the F up. And the juice and the energy and the feeling I got from that, I was like, oh my God, feels kind of good. And I just went off the deep end, and I just started doubling down, and I basically got a detention. But my parents were so amazing because they didn't take that as like, I think they saw something, how I was maybe awoken, or something in me was very...
You were destined for a different path.
I don't know. They were so great about not ridiculing me and like punishing me, rather like, oh, I guess you like performance or something along those lines. So from there, I kind of knew with Letterman and Stern, I just kind of knew I wanted to do that, but I had no clue how to get there. So I started doing stand-up. And then when I went to college, I was still doing stand-up and just kind of all over the place studying broadcast journalism. And then the Howard Stern thing I left for that. And then I went to work for the NFL Network and was a producer there. And then it wasn't until I went to grad school and got my master's at Northwestern in Chicago, where I really started becoming more of an on-air personality.
Your master's in
broadcast journalism.
Okay. And so did that then get you out to Vegas, though? How'd you end up here?
So I started doing...
Everyone's got a story how they end up in Vegas, right? Very few of us are already...
No, exactly. So
Although my kids will one day...
He did mention he was a local, so I got to come back to that, because I need to know what defines a local.
Okay.
How long do you have to be here to be a local?
At this point, it's going to be 6 years this summer. I definitely think I'm a local by this point. But, I was basically, I started working for NBC Sports Chicago. I was covering different stories. I was working out there. And then I got my first on-air job as kind of like a Jason Feinberg, but in Texas. I was a morning show talk show host in Texas. So I was moved out there. I was like 24 or 5 years old.
We're in Texas.
I was the first Jew to basically ever go to this city. Basically, for the Jewish community listening, they only had Havdalah services on Friday. They couldn't even they could barely garner a minyan. This place. It was nuts.
Incredible, yeah.
So it was a place called Tyler, Texas. The great Earl Campbell, running back from the Oilers, he's from there. Patrick Mahomes is actually from the town next door called White House. But I was there. I was a morning show talk show guy, and I ended up getting a talk show at night there. And after my stint there, I had a bunch of different offers throughout the community, throughout the country, and I had this offer from here in Fox 5 Las Vegas, and I moved out here to be like an entertainment reporter for the Moore Show and for Fox 5.
Well, seeing as you did a few shout-outs, shout out to Jason Feinberg.
Yes.
Also a previous guest of this podcast. He was early on.
Yeah.
He was COVID and we were still doing social distancing in here.
Wow.
He might have been that early.
bring him
Might have been top 20 in terms of like first 20, I should say.
I took offense because this morning he came over to my desk and he said, Jonathan was just texting me, asking me what I should ask Mike about. I was like, he needs to ask you what he should ask me about?
No, you find that sometimes people that, like, you've worked with him now 6 years,
right,
and you know him well, and he gave me nothing. He told me that you're good at fantasy football. That's literally the extent of the... Yeah, I thought maybe he'd have something of, like, you know, where we can get more detail with you. Gary really does. Yeah, Gary's already done the research, but if you know someone close to someone, it doesn't hurt to ask.
No, 100%.
You don't expect them to walk around there and be like, hey, and all he came up with is good at fantasy football. And but shout out to Jason Feinberg, because he's been doing that a long time.
Yeah, he's
Definitely.
masterful. He's one of the best. I mean, he's so talented, it's ridiculous.
I'll never forget, I went to T-Mobile. I was with Jason Feinberg and Tiesto. Tiesto's probably the biggest DJ in the world. I'd say he is. And we walked in, and Tiesto went first, and then I went in, and then Jason Feinberg, the security guard, goes, finally, a real celebrity's here, Jason.
Jason is one of the great...
He's very recognizable.
He's very recognizable, but he really is one of the most generous and kind people I've ever met. In our business, there's not a lot of people of his magnitude that would be so magnanimous to a newcomer like me. And speaking of Oscar's Steakhouse here at the Plaza, one of the first things he ever invited me to was his 50th birthday party.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Took a picture right here at a Vegas Golden Knights 50th jersey, and Flava Flav came,
that's right,
and it was a very special part. But he was just always a person who's he's so inclusive. You know, it's actually, for a Jewish guy, it's super impressive, because most people are just a little bit more curmudgeon-y and not so loving and welcoming and just like embracing of every single person. And he's just the sweetest guy. So he's exactly what you see on TV, and that's a really hard thing to do.
By the way, Flava Flav, we also hosted his 70th birthday here 2 weeks ago.
Flava Flav's
70, yeah. We had
He's 70?
on the patio there.
Oh my God, he looks. I gotta put a clock around my neck. Maybe I'll
Keep you looking young.
You need to go back and listen to like episode 4 with Flavor Flav. That one was off the rails. That was early on.
Yeah. So anyway, he was at Jason's 50th, and all really good Vegas people. And so you worked with Jason then the whole time?
So I moved here and I became very quickly. It's like, you find this out in a lot of careers. It's like you start very specialized, and if you're trying to really grow yourself and just you want to keep developing, you just keep asking to do more and more, or when opportunities are presented to you, you just keep saying yes, and that's what I did. So I came in with a very specialized role, but every time there was an opportunity to do something, I would do it. And I learned a big thing at Northwestern, that if anybody takes away my craziness from this show, is that you really have to double down on finding who you are, because there's a lot of things I'm not. And when I went to Northwestern, there were a lot of journalists better than me, a lot of people who wanted to be more of a traditional, anchorman type of figure. And I had a few professors that really embraced me and let me develop parts of myself that I really wanted to grow, that were more unique and special to me. And I just was thankful that from my stand-up and all these things, I had an ability to be natural on TV and just kind of be quirky and do my own thing. So I had long hair during COVID. Like, I just started doing a lot of different things on TV here, where I developed, okay, if Mike's on TV, it's going to be fun, it's going to be funny, and there's going to be a little bit of juice there.
Maybe it's a Philly trait then, because what you just said is really good life advice. I just gave this advice to somebody yesterday, actually, a young guy moving out of town, but what you just said is really important, which is you never said no to anything. Like you took on everything.
Right.
You were a yes guy and you were hungry.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's a guy sitting at this table from Philly who never says no to anything, and that's how he's done such a good job, because he started as a poker dealer.
Right.
And literally with me, never said no to anything, and I just kept giving him more and more and more.
Right.
To become the vice president of operations and a great podcast host.
And it's amazing. And it says a lot about who you are.
Never
but
said no.
But it's true. And now I'm at a place where I have a much more specialized, it's kind of like the circle of life. Now I've kind of moved over to this sister network called the Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, where we're literally new age podcast shows that air on Fox 5 at midnight throughout the week and our sister network, but they're digital first, they're talk shows. So now I'm executing actually a lot less than I used to have on my plate before, but you know, it's the circle of kind of growth and maturation, but I've always been focused on that. So I think if you can be honest with yourself and what your skills are and really what you want to do, that's huge. But then you got to be willing in those beginning years to just keep taking on more.
So where does this new network fit into the Vegas landscape? Like, what is it, and what is your goal with it?
So I was the first ever employee of it. I, had spent 4 years at Fox 5. I felt like I hit the ceiling a little bit. I had done everything. And I kind of wanted to see if I could get back to Philly. I wanted to see what my, potential would look like as a broadcaster in the business. And they presented this idea to me as like, hey, sports is becoming huge. We have the Knights here. We have the Aces. We have the Raiders. We have the Athletics on the way. We have all these things going on, and nobody's really quite captivated an audience here when it comes to sports. Back in Philly, you can't just decide you're going to become a sports network and gain any traction in this landscape. It's been going on for years, from Gary Papa to Angelo Cataldi to 94 WIP. Like, from 610 to 94 WIP, it's been established. So this network was an idea like, we need to take charge of the landscape, start airing local programming and content, and put on like the same thing you would see on Comcast Sportsnet in Philly, but see that here in Vegas. And now I'm a host, producer. I produce like 4 or 5 and host 4 or 5 shows that are just all about sports here in Vegas. Sin City Beat, Sound Off Sports. That's a show. It's a talk show where people call in. They can rant about whatever they want. Sin City Beat is kind of gleaned off of the Sports Reporters, that old show with Mike Lupica and Mitch Albom and John Saunders on ESPN, where we talk really in depth with other sports reporters here in Vegas about big sports topics. We got an NBA G League show because the NBA is on their way here. We got a fantasy football show I do with Jason Feinberg. So we got so much content that we're executing daily. You could go to our YouTube page, Silver State Sports on YouTube, and just see everything we're doing. And then it also airs on Fox 5, so it's a great thing. And Channel 77, if you have Cox, Channel 77 for our network.
And you still do Fox 5 as well sometimes.
Yeah, so my programming airs on Fox 7, and then in special moments and stuff, I'll do an interview. When WrestleMania came to town, Rey Mysterio, me and him fought in the studio, and we did a little fun. So, I'll come in for little things, but I used to be every morning, 7 to 11 on Fox 5, out and about in the community doing something,
And you've said, maybe in some of the articles I read about you or whatever, you said that Vegas is the sports capital of the world. Do you believe that?
I really do, because I think, look what happened with WrestleMania. Look what happened with the NFL draft, the Super Bowl. I think most of these other cities, like Philly, it's a haven for people like Gary and I who love Philadelphia sports and embrace that city. Now, is Vegas a little behind in that regard in terms of the fandom of people, of locals who are here embracing the city? I think VGK, absolutely not. I think VGK might be one of the best fan bases in all of the NHL.
That's incredible.
Okay. For the Raiders, it's still working. I think more people have to get there with that. For the Aces, I think when it comes to the WNBA, it's one of the best fan bases out there. So I think we're going to keep building, and I think we're going to have the Athletics. We're going to have an NBA franchise here eventually. You got UFC. Every time a sporting event comes here, it's the best version and turnout they've ever had. WrestleMania's numbers and figures were insane.
Were you at it?
Yes.
How was it?
It was.
Tell us that experience, because you weren't here.
No.
When the city was completely taken over by WrestleMania.
All I
couldn't go anywhere.
All I care about is you had Jake the Snake here.
That's true. Yeah, we had Jake the Snake. We had an interview.
See, it was I'm not a WrestleMania and wrestling aficionado, right? But it was a tremendous experience. I mean, people were going ape over this stuff. I mean, Jey Uso has this like yeet chant. I don't even know who Jey Uso was before the fight. He's a big wrestler. Everybody in all of Allegiant Stadium started doing in sync. They were doing this like dance move of this Jey Uso, this yeet thing. Like, I mean, it was just nuts.
You went both nights to Allegiant Stadium or just one of the nights?
Just one night. It was a great show. I saw Roman Reigns in the ring. Like, I could see why people get juiced up for it, but it was packed. There was like 62,000 people there. WrestleMania has never done those numbers. So Vegas is just, you guys know hospitality. Vegas is built for all these things. So, I mean, once we get that and pair that with the locals and all the people moving here who would start embracing these franchises, that's where when we get to that place, it's going to be nuts.
Well, let me say this. I think WrestleMania on Easter weekend was genius.
Yeah.
Kudos to the LBCVA for putting that off. Because filling up that weekend, which is always one of the slow weekends of the year, home run. Didn't quite work with F1, which we'll get your opinion on in a second.
Yeah.
But kudos to LBCVA. WrestleMania was amazing. I'm just going to say it, and maybe it's controversial, and sorry, Gary. I don't understand the grown men watching wrestling. Well, what am I missing here? I get it when you're 12 to 18. It's cool. I used to watch it. I love my Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, that generation. But now, what are you watching?
Listen,
what are you doing?
Hold on. If we're going to go back for just a minute. When we started setting up our viewing party, you said, well, why don't you get some of these old guys that I remember to
Legion
come in
of Doom, British Bulldog.
He rattled off these names. They're all dead. They're all dead. You were like, oh, what about the Ultimate Warrior? I'm like, yeah, we can't get him. He's not coming out. But I think it's just it's a lot different than when you were watching or when I was watching hardcore. It's a whole performance. I mean, it's like it's ballet at this point.
You know what it really is, and I'm just going to tell you two moments. But I got to give a shout out to, once again, another shout out. Producer James Edward Barrickman IV. He's my right hand man. He's my Gary. We do every show together with Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network. The guy's a great hard worker. He told me this when we were watching WrestleMania. He said, wrestling, WWE, is literally Real Housewives or a soap opera for men. Uh-huh. That's what it is. It's instead of watching Bravo's Real Housewives, it's just a soap opera. That's literally what it is. And you start seeing, I didn't really understand it. And then you're there and you start seeing there's all these storylines. There's all these beefs going on. There's all this stuff happening. That guy, Paul Heyman, the portly fellow who's he's tremendous. He's such a character. The dude does like a double turn during WrestleMania and he goes up and he gives a nut shot to Roman Reigns. Then he gives a nut shot to CM Punk, and it's like he's twisting and he's hitting him in the nuts. I'm like, I love this. I fucking love this now. Okay. I kind of understood it.
You've just blown my mind with that analogy. I guess it's the men's.
It's basically
Real Housewives.
Yeah, it's men's soap opera.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job.
I did like The Undertaker. Is he still around?
He got honored as a Hall of Famer.
Nice.
That night. Him and Bret Hart and a couple other people, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What about in terms of you mentioned the A's, by the way, and because we've had many debates on this podcast whether the A's is going to happen. Vital Vegas, Scott Robbins, adamant it isn't. I said on the last podcast it is when he and I were debating it, although I have no knowledge of it other than the fact that Mark Bedane, who I think is an amazing guy, incredible story, and one of the smartest people I know, has joined them, and there's no way he would have joined them as their team president, if he didn't know this thing was going to happen.
No, it's going to happen. And Mark did such a tremendous job with the Raiders.
Yeah.
And now he's going to see it through for the Athletics. Listen, this is good for baseball. It's good for Las Vegas. I'm not a reporter who's out. When Mike Davis shows up, I'm not trying to get anybody. I'm a champion of Las Vegas. I'm a talk show host. Am I negative on certain things? Do I give my authentic answers all the time? I strive to do that.
Yeah.
This is good for baseball. It's good for the MLB. I went out and covered an A's game at the Oakland Coliseum.
But hold on. There's a fine line between that and just being unrealistic. If something's never going to happen, let's not all get behind a cool story that's, some of these other arenas that they've talked about. I agree. The A's is happening.
Yes.
And Mark Bedane pulled it off with the Raiders. He was the driving force there. He's a driving force in everything he's done, and he's going to make sure it happens. I agree with you. I'm saying you're this sort of you're portraying yourself as this sort of you get behind everything, and it's
Not
cheerleading.
everything.
But some of these things are just ridiculous that get announced. It's like the stadium's going up here, stadium's going up there.
Yeah.
And
No, I get that.
And that's why I get Vital Vegas' skepticism, or Scott's skepticism.
But that's his MO, and that's where and everybody has a lane, and everybody has a thing that I think Scott's tremendous. Every time I see him, I say, I tune into everything he does. I think he's a tremendous reporter, journalist. It's just that's not me.
That's what your style, yeah.
And that's him. But that's who he is. If you go have a drink with him, that's his style.
Yeah.
Me, I'm more of a Energizer
Cheerleader.
bunny. I don't know if I'm cheerleading. I'm just saying, like, you have to be authentic to who you are. I'm not going to be the guy who's,
All right, so
doing
give us-
investigative journalism. That's just not me.
Let's see. Give us your take on F1.
So F1, I went the first year, didn't go the second year. I was not aware of the fandom and how huge F1 was until I arrived. Now, most of the interviews I did live on TV covering the event were not Americans. It was mostly people from, England, from France, from all over the globe coming here for this event. Once again, it's good for Vegas. I understand that there's issues and there's restaurants and there's businesses and there's complications that come with embracing a wide-scale global event like that impact local businesses, and that's awful. And that's not a good thing.
But not even just local businesses. I mean, we've historically said on the show, this was our worst weekend of the year.
Right.
2 years in a row.
And there's people that are a lot better and well more equipped on this podcast to break that down, and whether it's a good or a bad or a positive or a negative. I'd rather get your take on that. I just think, from my perspective, this is when you're growing, it's like a teenager. When you're going through puberty, when you're growing, when you're developing in anything as an organism, there's going to be a little bit of, growing pain. And that's that. I just think that's the most honest answer I can give. Is there negatives that have come with it? There's heartfelt stories that are really upsetting to a lot of local businesses and stuff. But it's also like, look what has happened. Like, look how this city is able to grow and foster and house an event like that. There's just not I think that's a special thing, and I think there's a pride that could be thought about as a Vegas local and as somebody who lives in Vegas and loves this city and breathes it and understands it. There's a pride that could be associated with that.
You're absolutely right. As a backdrop for the city, it's incredible.
Yeah.
The way the city looks on TV, the sphere, and people and these cars driving around, and the fountains. But I went both years, and I think it's an incredible spectacle. But from a business perspective, I understand the more, maybe better than anyone, or as well as anybody, we understand that it just wasn't a business success the same way maybe WrestleMania was. But keep in mind, it's very difficult because you're an event that chases off everybody else.
Yeah.
People don't want to come here when every street's closed down, or perceived to be closed down, and airfares more expensive, taxes are more expensive, and shows are closed.
100%.
So there's a bunch of reasons not to want to come over that weekend. So, and if you only have, in this town, you need an event with, I think, didn't LVCVA or Jeremy Aguero tell us it's like 300,000 people fills up this
I think
town?
it's 350.
So if you have a huge event that brings 100,000 people, if no one else comes, it's going to damage the city, right? So that's really where the challenges is, and that's a communication issue. And I think it improved a little bit year 2. Maybe it improves year 3. Although
we had the Neon City Festival too, though.
Yeah, but it's only, from what I gather, and maybe this is controversial, but it's only a 3-year deal with Clark County. It's a 10-year deal with LBCVA, but it's a 3-year deal with Clark County, which is going to be an interesting dynamic to see what happens there after this year. You were pretty fair there. I'll give you that. You weren't just. You
can ask me anything, and I will
blindly cheerleading.
No, you ask me anything, I'll be completely honest. I mean, we could even talk about, I thought we were going to bring this up. You may forget it, but so when I see Jonathan out and about in the Okay.
We haven't followed any of the script, by the way, so we're off the rails.
He's such, I look up to people like him, and so we were at a birthday party recently. And I pulled Jonathan aside. It wasn't like the first thing I spoke to him about, but we were just getting into a natural conversation about dating and life and all this stuff. And we're both tennis lovers, and we played it once or twice. And, I was likening a situation I'm dealing with in my personal life to tennis. And I think Jonathan, his eyes lit up a little bit because I think he maybe he just thinks I'm a cute face or something sometimes.
Okay.
But when I asked him this question as a eloquent podcast host as he is, I think he said, "Oh, maybe there's a little bit more substance to this Philly guy that I just think typically is a goofball. Maybe there's a little something deeper there." And I'll share what I said to him. I said, "Listen, I have a lot of things going for me, and I'm very blessed, and I love a lot of my life. There's this thing that's perpetually escaping me in my experience as a human, which is dating. And it's been very hard for me to find the one. And I think I'm type A."
This has just never happened on our podcast. This is great. Keep going.
So I'm just like, it's hard. And I think it's one of these things where I'm constantly, as a type A guy, like I'm thinking, I know what I can do in my professional life, being overly analytical, critical, and how I can make things better. So I try to, let that seep over into my personal life sometimes, and it doesn't work. And I was telling Jonathan, in tennis, one of my biggest issues as an athlete, specifically on the tennis court, was I would tighten up in big moments. And it was hard for me to really hit forehands and backhands in my strokes, really going for it with
when the stakes were raised.
When the stakes were raised. And you can see on add-ins or these, big-time match points or these critical points, a lot of high-level athletes and tennis players, they turn it up in those moments and they go for it. And they go for it with an open heart and with a lot of willingness and ease. I would tighten up. And what I would start doing in the tennis landscape, I would start kind of babying the ball in these big moments, and I'd start doing these big.
And you're doing the same thing on your dates. So
no. But at the same time, you don't mind going on air and being 100%
exactly
going all in.
I've worn
where everybody else would have stage fright.
Exactly. So that's why great guy here. Exactly. Driving home my point. I've worn a wedding dress on TV. I've gotten blue with the Blue Man Group. I have sang on TV. I do not sound like Adele. I've done I've dressed as Snow White on TV. I've worn a dress. I've worn.
You came to the opening of the Carousel Bar with me.
I've done so many crazy things on TV, and I can go all in. And it's exactly, if I had whatever that is, but on the tennis court, I probably would have been.
Or on the dates.
A high.
But can I just say?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And it's not on every date. It's on the dates that matter. That's the point. It's on the points that
the big
matter.
ones, the ones you care about, because you're overthinking it. But first I beat him at pickleball, and I beat him handsomely.
Yes.
Pickleball.
Yeah, but
there weren't any big match moments because it didn't get that close. It didn't get that close.
He beat me with Jason Strauss, and so I was playing with a random Filipino, and it was you and Jason Strauss, and I lost.
Yeah.
And then you beat me one-on-one pickleball. But we gotta play tennis.
So the other thing to note is, and this podcast now is on YouTube. We never used to do YouTube. We just started doing YouTube like 5 episodes ago, and so we can't edit any of this. And we used to be able to edit our podcast. I didn't know where you were going to go with your dating love stories, and appreciate you not going too far. But we just moved to YouTube. So if you're listening on air, you can see this on YouTube.
Right.
And we need the views because we need to boost that number as well.
Right,
we do much better on the download channel, Spotify, Apple.
Yeah.
We need to work on our
listen
YouTube.
on Apple.
Yeah, we need to work on our YouTube. But look, I did share with Mike, and people don't know this. I used to get very nervous too. I used to be a horrible public speaker. I used to be a terrible public speaker, and people probably like, no ways, that's not possible.
That's what I said. When he told me that, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I did the same exact thing.
Yeah. How old are you?
33.
So if you're a single lady watching this podcast on YouTube or any other platform, Mike Davis, ladies and
right
gentlemen.
into that camera right
he
there.
Gets nervous. He gets nervous on the first date.
No.
But he will relax after time and just pretend you're on air.
That's not the full story. First of all, I wish I had a beautiful South African accent like that. That would really, honestly, who would care anymore? Regardless of what I did, if I had that accent, I'd be okay. But no, listen, that's the problem. I can go on tremendous amount of dates with people that I don't really see a future with or any of that kind of stuff. And then once I bring any ounce of intentionality and try to be a good person and want to show my best and go all in and blah, 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 I tighten up.
Yeah. Well, we will continue that conversation. This podcast wasn't dedicated.
I just wanted
this podcast just isn't made. I'm just not good at this. This part wasn't meant to be.
I was just saying because I had that conversation.
Yes, we do have that, and we will close that loop privately. I have some ideas for you.
Okay, good.
But back to what you were talking about. You talked about dressing up as Snow White. Do you have a more memorable, iconic moment here in Vegas? Besides, obviously, you did the pandemic. You went through that.
Right.
But post that, coming out of that, what sticks in your mind is I know you're with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah,
pretty much been with every celebrity or local in town. What sticks in your mind?
The two biggest things during the pandemic was nuts. Because it was such the Wild West. Nobody knew anything about how to do. And while all these people were like closing up shop, all these people had to go home and work from home and things were closing, they literally kept me on TV throughout the pandemic. And I would literally go on TV with a mask. I had long hair and I'd have a boom mic. And I'd literally like hold out a boom mic and do an interview like this with people. And we were doing just nuts. I caught COVID twice. Just being out and about and doing these things and still maintaining. So it was a crazy time. And it was one of those cool things where sometimes when you have your hands tied, you get more creative. So I was proud of a lot of things we did. We did this one show called Curbside Dining because all of a sudden, whether you were Arby's or you were Del Frisco's, everybody started offering curbside dining because they didn't want to lose out on the money of not being able to go into a restaurant.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Oscars maybe even like you could, get, a meal and just pull up, and it would come out and you could get a curbside meal. So we basically came up with this concept where I was like a Jewish Guy Fieri. If you know like Guy Fieri's great show, Triple D,
Yeah.
I was a Jewish Guy Fieri just going around town and we would shoot 2 or 3 of these a day and we would just go to different businesses and just have this great time, like highlighting local businesses, mom and pop places. It was a lot of fun. So that sticks out. And
Anything more recently?
Recently, I just had an amazing interview with the new head coach of the Runnin' Rebels.
Oh, I've heard about him.
Josh Pastner. I was talking to him about you.
Okay.
Actually, he's a Jewish guy.
Yeah.
Tremendous coach. He came from Georgia Tech and Memphis. He was a walk-on at the University of Arizona, won a championship there in '97. We all know, it's fascinating, full circle here in Vegas, we have all these great offerings. But from a sports standpoint, true locals, true people who grew up and were born and raised Vegas people, the Runnin' Rebels were the thing. I mean, and since I've been here for 6 years, they lost their juice. They haven't been the talk of really anything. It's fascinating that what Barry Odom did with the football team, UNLV football was more prominent than the basketball team.
Right.
Which is unheard of when people start thinking about Jerry Tarkanian and all those great teams. And so Josh Pastner, we just had a great interview with him the other day. You got to go to Silver State Sports, our YouTube page. It's going to be on Fox 5. It's going to be on Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network. Cox Channel 77, but go to our YouTube page, Silver State Sports, because we have a 15-minute conversation, Josh and I, from everything. From Jewish stuff we talk about, from he was a 13-year-old when he was getting his bar mitzvah. At the same time, he started a scouting service. Wow. In Houston, when he was 13 years old, other college coaches thought it was
I'm excited about him. I heard he's the real deal. He's going to come to the next Oscars dinner series, and we should probably have him come on our podcast.
Yeah. He's a tremendous guy. He's got more energy than me. He's like, you can't out-talk me. He can out-talk.
He does?
Yeah.
Wow. No, I'm excited.
So I really
Let's check that out.
I think he's going to bring back the Rebels and the Runnin' Rebels to dominance. I think we're gonna get that back. And I love basketball, so I'm excited.
That's something this community gets behind when they're good.
Yeah.
When shit, no one gets behind it.
And he's a perfect mesh of like coach and X's and O's and like a CEO. Because in today's landscape of college athletics, you need, it's a business. It's NIL, name, image, and likeness. All these players are making money in college, so you got to be able to get boosters. You got to be able to get some, backing for your program. So he's going to be well equipped, and I think there's going to be bright days ahead.
Well, Oscars has a buyout tonight, and we're going to have to shut down. Plus, I'm going to the Golden Knights game tonight, but I do want to cover a couple of other things.
Yeah.
You hinted that Gary might be a genius, and Gary might be a genius, but Gary, why don't you tell...
Oh, I don't think we're ready to talk about it.
Well, just talk about it.
Well, I mean, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
We doing it? We're just going to talk about it right here on the podcast?
We're doing it.
Okay.
I'm going to be a
So-
part of this, right, Gary?
Yeah, you're already a part of it.
Okay.
You just got to cross the finish line. I mean, that was
Okay.
meeting for later on this week.
Well, why are you a genius, Gary? What have you come up with?
Okay, so we are going to be bringing, and you're a great guest to have for this, the Wing Bowl, which was a Philadelphia tradition for 25 years. It was always the Friday before Super Bowl. Pretty much the Eagles at the time, the Philadelphia Eagles, were never going to make a Super Bowl. So Philadelphia, the local radio station out there, had created a bowl for themselves, which was a chicken wing eating contest that they would have every year. This thing grew from a small, in like a banquet hall type of arena or venue to selling out 20,000 seats at the Wells Fargo or the Spectrum.
What is, for a layman English person, what is this? They just eat chicken wings?
That it's a chicken wing eating contest,
Like
but
the
it-
hot dog eating thing, or
but it has-
the Joey Chestnut thing, where they just.
but it has
eat-
very little to do with eating chicken wings. It's a whole spectacle that we're gonna be putting on.
There's wingettes, which is perfect for a place like Vegas. These girls, pretty girls in bikinis, bringing the trays of food. There's Joey Chestnut has won it many times.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy named El Wingador who you're already in communication with. My dad is a plastic surgeon in the Philadelphia area. He used to pull me and my brother out of school in elementary school to go to the Wing Bowl early in the morning on WIP at these events because my dad was a wingette judge and he judged the wingettes, and they'd have, Pat Croce, they'd have all these great people that were representatives, but it started off as a little thing. Al Morganti created it, and then they just kept building and building and building. And one of my mentors, the great Angelo Cataldi, who was the morning show host on WIP, it was just so much fun. And you'd see people projectile vomiting. You'd see,
Are they plain? Are they plain wings, or what is this?
No, they're buffalo chicken wings.
yeah. And it's just a great fit for Las Vegas. So when Gary told me that this was actually something in the works and that he had even managed to get this far along, I was like, holy shit. I mean, this is major. This is like a big deal. It's for years in the back of my mind, I would think in the shower while I'm driving, the Wing Bowl would be so perfect in a place like Las Vegas. And I think the Plaza.
Why did it stop in Philly?
It's
See,
so,
no. The
Well,
year they won the Super Bowl in 2018, they
Yeah.
stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that was the whole thing, was giving them an opportunity to have a bowl.
So are we doing this until Vegas wins the Super Bowl?
They
I hope Vegas wins the Super Bowl before,
They did
that, but
probably, I don't even know how many years they did, but the show ended and all that stuff. It was new people, but once they won, it kind of became a different thing.
I sat with Joey Chestnut the other day at Bagel Mania because he won the bagel eating
Yes.
contest. He had like 9 bagels. I mean, it doesn't sound like it. Do you know how hard it is to eat 9
I did it with
bagels?
him on TV. On TV, I did a little sample run of trying to beat him. I couldn't. Yeah, it's impossible. I
Of
mean, the
course you
dude
could
is.
beat him, but yeah, the guy's
But I
crazy.
couldn't even get through a bagel. Like the way he's able to do it, he's gifted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a weird way. Weird gift out.
100%.
All right, so we're doing it. Fans, if you're listening to this and you like Wing Bowl and you got ideas and you want to be involved, DM Gary.
Yeah, go to Wing Bowl LV on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll figure it out from there.
You already signed those up?
I already have them, yeah, but we weren't ready to announce this, but here we are.
There
Yeah,
you go.
we've
I like the
announced it.
style. I'm however you need me.
Amy and PR is going to love this.
I want to champion this. So however you need me, I'm there to
All right,
assist. Yeah.
cool. And my other question was, how do you think the Raiders did on the draft? Or any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the two big takeaways. I mean, Ashton Genty, I think everybody knows, if you're a UNLV fan, you've seen him play at Boise State, tremendous running back, 6 overall draft pick. Listen, the two takeaways from my perspective. The Raiders were a franchise for a long period of time. I'm not talking John Madden and, all the years with Art Shell and different, no, Howie Long. I'm talking of recent memory. The Raiders were a franchise that took chances, bad risks sometimes, and didn't hit on a lot of character types of players. We've seen it in the past.
Jamarcus Russell.
He was a bust, but Henry Ruggs. I mean, there's a lot of stories in the past where people have maybe had the talent on the field, but off the field, they were not the same culture type of figure that they won in the locker room. And just like we were talking about Jonathan,
Brown.
about the trickle down effect and how, these things matter and how in culture building and all these things. I'm a big believer in locker room and intangibles. Ashton Genty, for as talented as he is on the field, he came almost 40 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' record in college football as a rusher. This is a dude with tremendous ability. You watch him and you're like, this guy I've never seen anything like this. But beyond that, his character even speaks more volumes. This is a guy in the state of college football where we are right now, where everybody is making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Shedeur Sanders is going to make less money now this year than he will having played college football. Ashton Genty bypassed the transfer portal, bypassed millions of dollars to stay at Boise State at the program that got him where he is, and that speaks volumes to me. So he bypassed millions of dollars as a college student, putting his body on the line because he wanted to be there for his team, his teammates, and wanted to give back to the program that did him well. This is going to be a character, a culture builder, the type of person that's great on and off the field that the Raiders need. And Tom Brady, John Spytek, the new GM, the new head coach, Pete Carroll, they're equipping this team with a totally different mentality. There's not going to be any privilege. There's not going to be any. It's all about competition and putting people in position to succeed and getting the right people on and off the field. And I think it's a slam dunk. And that's probably why they didn't go with Shedeur Sanders. That's the big talk of the draft. Deion Sanders' son, QB from Colorado, was projected to be a top 5 pick, ended up going in the 5th round, 144.
Right? Yeah.
Character issue. He's a tremendous talent. Quarterback's the most important position
Him
in
and
all.
Deshaun Watson together.
Right.
Talking about characters.
So, but exactly. So you talk about the Cleveland Browns, the type of guy they have in the building with Deshaun Watson. They felt like, you know what? Let's throw Shedeur in. And I'm saying Shedeur's anything like him because they're two different issues. I mean, sexual assault allegations and just being bad at personal interviews. It's not, it's not the same thing, but it's a distraction, and if you don't believe in him as a can't miss prospect, you don't want problematic people as a backup quarterback. So
Can Geno Smith bring winning football to Las Vegas?
I think so. I think you need to compete now. You want to be competitive. Listen, you're in a division in the AFC West with Sean Payton, Andy Reid, Harbaugh. I mean, you get Pete Carroll, who's at that level. He's been around the block. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1. He's won at college with USC. You got him. This is a culture builder. He's infectious. The first day that he signed, I went on TV on Vox 5. I started chewing gum, like the way that I just love the dude. He's got great, he is very reminiscent of Pastner, the new UNLV basketball coach. So you get that juice. Spytek was an evaluator of talent, a scout with the Bucks, with Tom Brady, worked very hand in hand. Brady's a minority owner. These guys know what it takes to win. It's going to be a totally new day for the Las Vegas Raiders.
You fully depressed me when you mentioned Henry Ruggs, because that is still one of the things I don't understand and what happened there. But you've got me excited now. I'm ready. I'm excited.
I'm telling you, silver and black, baby,
you could be
and
the face
Run
of the team.
Rebels. It's going to be exciting stuff.
Gary, you didn't listen to one thing on your agenda. You read his introduction. You literally didn't read one other thing on your introduction. But go on.
What advice would you like to give young people that are looking to break into media?
Besides, don't get tight on your first date. What else would you like to ask
the two things I said earlier: be confident in who you are. Try to find out what your special quality is, and double down on that. I think there's a lot of people who say you got to I'm not a person who thinks you got to master everything. I think figure out what you can do, what separates you, and drive that home and be unique, because it's hard to do that. Bill Maher, one of my good buddies, he's another mentor of mine. He kind of took me under his wing. He's a great guy. He told me to the effect, and I think this is super smart. It's like, try to find something unique and special that nobody else is doing. Because if somebody is already doing it, there's a good chance they're doing it better than you. So try to do something different that is unique to you. So I always, think about that and have that in the back of my head. And then the other thing I said, which is true to your core, Gary, like Jonathan said, when you're starting out, you want to eat up as much as possible. It's not about, there's a difference between being eager and being open to opportunity and putting your head down and taking those chances and trying to show your worth. So I think those two things together.
You're
the
a
way to
star,
go.
man. You're a star. Appreciate your energy, your enthusiasm, your candor. Love what you're doing in the community, and thank you for joining us here today on the podcast.
Thank you.
And feel like you might be able to do another episode or two in the future.
We got to talk Julian Krinsky. So
There we go, 3. Ding, ding, ding,
so
ding.
we have to talk about that next time. But
All right.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Be fine.
You a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @JonathanJossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.